In this video, we're going to discuss a topic that has been a hot topic in recent years: cannabis legalization in the United States. Cannabis has been a controversial topic for decades, with some people viewing it as a dangerous drug while others view it as a helpful medication. In recent years, there has been a significant push for cannabis legalization in the U.S., with many states already legalizing its use for medical or recreational purposes. In this video, we'll explore the history of cannabis legalization, the current state of affairs, and what the future might hold for cannabis in the U.S. Part 1. History of cannabis legalization. To understand the current state of cannabis legalization in the U.S., we need to look at the history of how we got here. Cannabis has been used for thousands of years for its medicinal and recreational properties. In the United States, cannabis was legal until the early 1900s, when various states began passing laws to restrict its use. In 1937, the federal government passed the Marijuana Tax Act, which effectively made cannabis illegal at the federal level. For the next several decades, cannabis remained illegal in the U.S., with the government enforcing strict penalties for possession and distribution. However, in the 1990s, some states began to legalize cannabis for medical purposes. California was the first state to do so, passing Proposition 215 in 1996. This law allowed patients with certain medical conditions to use cannabis with a doctor's recommendation. Since then, many other states have followed California's lead and legalized cannabis for medical purposes. As of 2021, 36 states and the District of Columbia have legalized medical cannabis. However, it wasn't until 2012 that Colorado and Washington became the first states to legalize recreational cannabis use. Part 2. Current state of cannabis legalization. Today, cannabis legalization is a patchwork of laws that vary from state to state. While 36 states have legalized medical cannabis, only 15 states and the District of Columbia have legalized recreational cannabis. However, these numbers are constantly changing, with more states considering legalization every year. One of the major factors driving the push for cannabis legalization is the growing recognition of its medicinal properties. Cannabis has been shown to be effective in treating a wide range of conditions, including chronic pain, anxiety, and epilepsy. Many people who suffer from these conditions have found relief through the use of medical cannabis. Another factor driving the push for legalization is the economic benefits that it can bring. Legal cannabis sales have generated billions of dollars in tax revenue for states that have legalized its use. In addition, legal cannabis has created thousands of jobs in states where it is legal. However, there are still many challenges facing the cannabis industry. One of the biggest challenges is the fact that cannabis is still illegal at the federal level. This creates a number of problems for businesses operating in the cannabis industry, including difficulties obtaining financing and banking services. Part 3. Arguments for and against cannabis legalization. There are a number of arguments for and against cannabis legalization. Supporters of legalization argue that it can be a safe and effective way to treat a variety of medical conditions. They also point out the economic benefits that legal cannabis can bring. Opponents of cannabis legalization argue that it can be a dangerous drug that can lead to addiction and other negative consequences. They also argue that legalization can lead to increased use among young people, and that it can be difficult to regulate the potency and quality of cannabis products. Another argument against legalization is the fact that cannabis is still illegal at the federal level. Some opponents of legalization argue that this creates a conflict between state and federal law, and that it can be difficult to enforce regulations and ensure public safety in a system that is not fully legal. Part 4. Current challenges facing cannabis legalization. While cannabis legalization has made significant strides in recent years, there are still many challenges facing the industry. One of the biggest challenges is the lack of standardization and regulation. Because cannabis is still illegal at the federal level, there are no national standards for the production, testing, and labeling of cannabis products. This can make it difficult for consumers to know exactly what they are buying and how it will affect them. Another challenge facing the industry is the lack of access to financial services. Because cannabis is still illegal at the federal level, many banks are hesitant to work with cannabis businesses. This can make it difficult for these businesses to obtain loans, access credit, and even store their money safely. Another challenge facing the industry is the stigma surrounding cannabis use. While attitudes towards cannabis are changing, there are still many people who view it as a dangerous drug. This can make it difficult for cannabis businesses to operate, as they may face resistance from local communities and government officials. Part 5. The future of cannabis legalization. So what does the future hold for cannabis legalization in the US? While it's impossible to predict exactly what will happen, it seems likely that cannabis will continue to become more widely accepted and legalized in more states. One possible scenario is that cannabis will eventually be legalized at the federal level. This would make it easier for cannabis businesses to operate and for consumers to access safe, regulated products. It would also help to address some of the challenges facing the industry, such as access to financial services and standardization. Another possibility is that more states will continue to legalize cannabis for medical and recreational use. As more states legalize cannabis, it becomes increasingly difficult for the federal government to maintain its prohibition. Finally, it's possible that cannabis will continue to face significant challenges, particularly at the federal level. Despite the growing acceptance of cannabis, there are still many people who oppose its legalization and are working to prevent its expansion. In conclusion, cannabis legalization is a complex and controversial issue. While it has made significant strides in recent years, there are still many challenges facing the industry. However, as attitudes towards cannabis continue to change and more states legalize its use, it seems likely that cannabis will continue to become more widely accepted and accessible in the US. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.